President Vladimir Putin has told a meeting of his senior officials that Ukrainian forces must be kicked out of the country. He was speaking as Ukraine continues its week-long offensive, with troops advancing up to 30 kilometers, that's 18 miles, inside Russian territory. Local authorities are now evacuating residents from a second region, Belgorod, which is situated next to Kursk. That's where the Ukrainian offensive began last Tuesday. The acting governor of the Kursk region said Ukraine was in control of 28 villages there. President Putin claimed Ukraine was trying to improve its negotiating position.
The Defence Ministry's main task is to push and to kick the enemy out of our territory. The enemy is probably trying to improve its future negotiating position. What negotiations can we conduct with people who are targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure, or those trying to threaten nuclear energy safety? But the main target is a military one, to slow the Russian advance at other parts of the front. So what? The speed of the Russian advance has increased 1.5 times.
So what will this Ukrainian advance mean in the wider context of the war? With more on the rapidly developing situation, here's our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera.
Russian citizens who fled their homes amid fears that fighting may spread. This is in the Belgorod region today, where 11,000 people have been told to move. It comes after more than 70,000 were evacuated from the neighbouring Kursk region. That's where Ukraine launched its lightning advance. People's surprise at the events as they unfolded was clear.
My husband kept running to the cellar. On the first day, I ran to the cellar. Then I couldn't. I was in my room. I lay huddled up, and it went bang, bang, bang.
The attack started nearly a week ago with elite Ukrainian forces heading over the border into the Kursk region. Their advances here in yellow. In some cases, they've been operating 20 miles inside Russia. The plan seems to be to draw Russian forces away from the areas in red inside Ukraine, where Moscow had been making steady advances. These burnt-out Russian military vehicles are one indication of how far Moscow was taken by surprise. But it's promised a tough response to what Vladimir Putin has called a major provocation, and it's sending troops into the region.
The battle to come, and this battle has only just started, but the battle to come in this Kursk pocket will be measured in days and weeks, not weeks and months, because the Russians will not allow this to stand. They will put into this pocket whatever it takes to snuff it out, whatever it takes, because whatever happens in Ukraine is less important than what happens on the Russian border.
And inside Ukraine, the brutal war of attrition between the two sides continues, carrying with it risks. This is the Zaporizhia nuclear plant where a fire broke out. Ukraine blamed occupying Russian forces, while the Russians blamed Ukraine for the blaze. Ukraine's incursion into Russia is a bold but risky move. It has changed the dynamic of the war for the moment, but the outcome remains uncertain. Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
And earlier, Sergey from BBC Russian gave us his analysis.
Putin has gathered his infamous siloviki, those guys who are in response of the security in Russia. Among them were the former Minister of Defense Sergey and the people who are the closest one to Putin, so the leaders of the FSB and Rosgvardia, the National Guard, both directly work under President Putin. Those are now responsible for restoring order in the region which are touched by that incursion, which are partly occupied by Ukrainian forces, and they are going to do that in terms of imposing that regime of counter-terrorist operation, and the one which was imposed before in Chechnya in early 2000s when Russia was leading its second campaign in Chechen Republic, and the one which was imposed in some of the Russian regions a year ago during the infamous Prigozhin's mutiny. So this is something really significant, and it allows the FSB and the National Guard to do basically whatever they want on the territory.
How is the Russian media portraying this incursion by Ukrainian forces?
As basically, as Putin has already commented on that, so it's like a provocation. It's something that its so-called Kiev regime, I mean the Ukrainian authorities, are doing to get themselves into a better position to before the probable possible peace talks. And this is actually the thing where Kiev statements and Moscow statements align in a way. So basically what we hear from Kiev is that this operation could be something which could lead to a better position for Kiev at the peace talks, and Moscow is now saying the same. But the fact is that Vladimir Putin warned that Russia is not ready to negotiate with Kiev at any point, and even said that specifically that there is nothing to talk about with Kiev now.
We've often focused, haven't we, on the capabilities of the Ukrainian forces and what resources they have to hand. In terms of Russia responding to this Ukrainian offensive, what is that going to mean on the Russian front line?
Well, it now means basically that Russia did not have their own borders secured, which allowed that incursion to happen. And this is already not a good sign. Again, last week there was that infamous video of a Russian convoy being bombarded by HIMARS missiles and being destroyed. And that was, again, a significant mistake in the military operation. And third, Russia would need to withdraw some of their forces eventually to prevent Ukrainian forces to advance on the Kursk and Belgorod directions. And in order to do that, they will need to withdraw from Kharkiv direction and from Donetsk. And that will probably lead their very slow invasion at those parts of Ukraine to stall. So maybe it could lead to some changes at the front line, but it's really hard to tell at the moment because it's the first time we're encountering something like this. It's the first time we're seeing this swift change of strategy from the Ukrainian armed forces.
I've also been speaking to former Deputy Minister of Defense for Ukraine, Alina, about the motivation and strategy behind Ukraine's offensive.
I think that Ukraine never declared that we are ready to negotiations now. So I think that there could be plenty of different other reasons behind, including that we do not perceive that as a crossing a border. We do perceive it as a very flexible border line or front line, and that's just like a change of the initiative on the front line. So that, although yes, if there would be negotiations, which doesn't seem realistic now because Russia is still not changing their position and demonstrate their readiness to negotiate, that could be some part of the pressure.
So Ukraine has obviously demonstrated its willingness to take the offensive into Russia, but based on its capabilities, resources at the moment, I'm thinking of in particular, how long do you think this offensive can last?
Well, it depends on what is the purpose of this operation. We still don't know yet. This is only our conclusions from the situation, but there is a command, there is like a president and chief of defense, and they do have some picture behind it. It can be short term, it can be long term, and I think that this is still war. There are a lot of those factors which can influence on further developments. I heard statements in the beginning that this would be only operation. And I think that very much will depend on what we would like to reach and how Russians reacted on this. From now on, we don't see some kind of strong reaction from Russian side. They cannot relocate troops. They cannot stop the movement of Ukrainian forces. And we'll see.